This is video 9F of a Year 8 mathematics course. In this video, we're going to be covering the theory behind angle sum of a quadrilateral under the topic of plane geometry. Specifically, we are going to explore the sum of a quadrilateral's internal angles theorem and its proof, how to find missing angles inside of a quadrilateral, and then we're going to cover some example questions. A couple of videos ago, when we were talking about triangles, one of our biggest discussion points was the theorem that when you add up the three internal angles of any triangle, the result is always 180 degrees. And we actually had a nice proof that we had a look at as well to go alongside this theorem. So what we're going to be looking at now is a very, very similar idea, but now we're going to be looking at the internal angles of a quadrilateral. So, as it turns out, whenever you add up all four internal angles of any quadrilateral, the result is always 360 degrees. So, as a diagram, what that means is, let's just say we had a random quadrilateral that looked like this, so just a four-sided polygon. Let's say this angle here is A degrees, this angle here is B degrees, this angle here is C degrees, and this angle here is D degrees. Then what this therefore means is that A plus B plus C plus D is equal to 360 degrees. So, very, very similar to our triangle theorem. However, in this case, instead of having three internal angles, we've now got four, and the sum will now be 360 degrees. Let's now just do a very, very quick proof showing this. So, let me just quickly draw up a random generic quadrilateral. And what I'm going to do here is I'm actually going to split this quadrilateral into two triangles by drawing this diagonal. Now, let me call this angle here A, this one B, this one C, this one D, this one E, and this one F. Now, using our triangle theorem, we know that A plus B plus C will be equal to 180 degrees. So that's the three angles of this triangle here. Furthermore, we know that D plus E plus F will also be 180 degrees, because that's this triangle here with internal angles of D, E, and F. Now, what we can see about this particular quadrilateral is that the four internal angles are this one, this one, this one, and this one. So if we now want to write an expression for the sum of these internal angles, we can say A plus B plus D plus E plus C plus F. However, we know that A plus B plus C will be equal to 180 degrees. So in other words, A plus B plus C will be 180. Furthermore, we also know that D plus E plus F will also be equal to 180 degrees. Or in other words, D plus E plus F will be 180. So what that therefore means is that when we add up these six things, we get 180 plus 180, or in other words, 360 degrees. So the sum of these four internal angles must be equal to 360 degrees. Very, very nice, simple proof using the triangle theorem that we covered a couple of videos ago. Now, in terms of the types of questions that we're going to get regarding this theorem here, they're more or less going to be the exact same as the types of questions that we got from the triangle theorem. In that, we're going to be given some quadrilateral with some known angles and with some unknown angles. We're then just going to apply this particular theorem that if you add up the four internal angles, the result is 360 degrees. And then you'll have an equation that you'll then solve to find the particular variable that you're given. So once again, very, very similar to the types of questions that we covered when we dealt with this exact same thing with triangles, but in this case, we're just working with quadrilaterals instead. Alright, with that being said, let's now go through a quick few examples on using this particular theorem. So first example, let's consider this quadrilateral here. This angle here is 40 degrees, this one here is x degrees, this one here is 130 degrees, and this one here is 110 degrees. Well, from the theorem that we just covered, we know that the sum of these four angles must be equal to 360 degrees. So in other words, x plus 130 plus 110 plus 40 is equal to 360. If we combine these three numbers here, we get x plus 280 is equal to 360, subtracting 280 from both sides, and we get x is equal to 80. Alright, and then second and final example that we're going to consider is the following. This angle here is x degrees, this angle here is x degrees, this angle here is 120 degrees, and this angle here is 70 degrees. Now, exact same thing, from our quadrilateral angle theorem, we know that the sum of these four internal angles must be equal to 360 degrees. Or in other words, x plus 70 plus 120 must be equal to 360. Combining these two x's gives us 2x, combining these two numbers gives us 190 equals 360. Subtracting 190 from both sides, and we get 2x is equal to 170, and then by dividing through everything by 2, we get x is equal to 85. Alrighty, let's summarize what we've learnt today. So in this video, we introduced the interior angles of a quadrilateral theorem, which states that the sum of the four interior angles of any quadrilateral will always equal 360 degrees. We then proved this theorem using the interior angles of a triangle theorem. Finally, we applied this theorem to answer some example questions. And that's it for now. See you in the next video.